You're listening to the Radius Church podcast, recorded live each Sunday in North Hollywood, California.
Every year, I tell you what I want for Christmas, and nobody's done it yet. Every year, I stand on stage and I say, I want a G.I. Joe aircraft carrier. You still haven't come through for me. I said it last year. I said it the year before. First time it ever appeared on my Christmas wish list was about 30 years ago when it came out. G.I. Joe aircraft carrier. How hard could this possibly be? Actually, believe it or not, very hard. Very difficult to find this product now. It's kind of a collector's item. I should have got in on this early, back when I first was asking about it. So I'm just going to speak it out again into, the midnight clear, or Santa, or the universe, or the elf on the shelf. I've been a nice boy this year. But I'm giving up hope. I'm probably not going to get this thing. A couple of years ago, my daughters, they knew that I wanted an aircraft carrier, the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier, but they instead got me a giving key with the word believe on it, so it kind of feels like a joke. It's true, so it says believe. I'm still believing. Actually, for the record, I don't really want this. I say this to be silly. Please do not start a Kickstarter campaign to buy a pastor a G.I. Joe aircraft carrier. Please do not. Even if you did, and that would be so kind of you, I don't know where I would put this thing. It's like over 6 feet long. Did anyone in this room ever own one of these? Yeah, nobody. So, what thinking parent is going to get their child a 6-foot toy? Some of them did. Nobody in here did it? I can't see. Ben did? You did, Ben Strength, you had one?
Traded for one.
You traded? What did you trade for one? A lot of Allen Iverson cards. Is that a sports thing? I don't know sports. So, I get really excited around Christmas because I love anticipation. I don't know if you're like me. I love building up to big surprises. And, every time that you are in a season of anticipation, of course, you are risking some great disappointment. And that's not just for holidays, that's all sorts of life. But in the holiday season, of course, you've got anticipation that maybe this big event or the party that you're throwing is going to, go off the way that you envision. And then there might be some disappointment when it doesn't quite happen the way you want, or that, the new recipe you were trying didn't quite turn out, but now the whole family has to eat this thing. And, or maybe that gift that you really went out of your way and you thought it was going to be, this is really going to pack a punch with someone you care about. And it just didn't, it sort of fell flat when they opened the thing. There's all this anticipation that we love to embrace around this time of year, whatever you celebrate, if it's Christmas or Hanukkah. I suppose if you celebrate Festivus, you don't have a lot of anticipation for anything. Which is tomorrow, by the way. So happy Festivus early. Nope, don't get excited about that. You can't do that. And if you've never even cracked a Bible, you know that people anticipate that Jesus is sort of the wrapping paper around all kinds of big presents that you should anticipate. Like if you finally give your life to Jesus or follow Jesus or believe this whole Jesus thing, you're supposed to get a lot out of it. And that's not made up. That's really from the source documents themselves. There's some big promises that came with the birth of this baby in this little town in the middle of nowhere. This one non-religious doctor, a guy named Luke, he gathered eyewitness accounts and put together a biography of Jesus. And when he gathered the shepherds' accounts of what they experienced that night, the shepherds reported seeing angels making big promises about the birth of this baby. And maybe you've heard some of this before, but in Luke's biography, it says, the angels reassured these terrified shepherds, don't be afraid, the angel said, I bring you good news that will bring, and here's the big present, great joy to all people, not just some people, not just healthy people, not just rich people, joy to all people. And if you are a follower of Jesus, you know that one of the things it's supposed to be about is joy. And not just joy when you get everything that you want and life's comfortable, but joy in all circumstances, even the really, really dark ones. You're supposed to have joy. And that's why I think that sometimes the anticipation for joy might actually be one of the biggest letdowns. In terms of all the promises around Jesus, joy seems to be the most elusive. Jesus promises hope. Well, that's something I can kind of hang on to because I want to be optimistic about the future. The birth of Jesus promised that God loves us, and whether you believe that there is a God, that's kind of a nice idea that the God who made you loves you. You want to believe that that's true. But the problem with joy, the promise of joy, is that the payoff is supposed to be right now. Like you're supposed to be reaping the benefits of joy, feeling joy right now. Where is my aircraft carrier? You know, when you face the reality of life and then you try to find, where's this magical experience of joy that's supposed to be promised? Comfort and joy. That's why joy, of all the promises around Jesus, might feel like the most insulting. Because I want it and I don't feel like I have it. You know, in my line of work, I have the privilege of talking to people about their real lives, you know, underneath all the Christmas carols of comfort and joy, what's really going on. And what I've discovered is when we set our hopes on some experience of joy, is it really that bad? Okay. Hello. Wow. Really? It was that bad? Okay. Hey, everybody. Can you hear me now in the back of the room? I'm so sorry about that. Did I say that I wanted the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier? Did we cover that? Okay. I think that's about all we need to talk about now. Where was I? Joy. That's not helping. The whole thing's about joy. Oh, I remember. No, this is good that you're finally now hearing what I'm about to say, because this is super good, what I'm about to say. This is like the best stuff in the whole talk. I do have the privilege of talking to a lot of people about real life. And so we might show up on a Sunday and sing about comfort and joy, but, you know, my real life still has divorce in it. You know, my real life still has the anxiety and the clinical depression I'm suffering in it. My real life still has some of the threats and the betrayal in it. And what I've found is when we talk about joy in the midst of real life that many of us know and many of us are experiencing in a very dark and difficult way right now, when we talk about joy, it leads us in one of two different directions I've found in my conversations with people. The first place that it often leads us is the assumption that joy is impossible. This concept of joy, like let's just stop wishing for the aircraft carrier and let's get real. Let's aim a little bit lower. Joy is impossible, so I will aim for happy. This idea of this magical experience of joy, even when times are tough, is not going to happen. It's a nice sentiment, but it's not going to happen. I'll aim for happy. I think it's probably better for me and for my psyche if I can just settle for a life filled with bursts of happiness and then I die. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to. But this transcendent sense of joy, no matter what, just doesn't seem like it's within reach. So I'm going to try and reduce how bad life feels sometimes, reduce the discomforts of life and the disappointments of life, protect myself from them, maybe medicate away from them if I have to, escape from them, because the best life can get is a few wonderful moments of happiness. But joy? The other direction that leads us when we talk about joy in the midst of real life is that joy, the promise of joy, proves that God, or the concept of God, doesn't really work. Because if I'm supposed to get joy when I get God, then how come the followers of Jesus are some of the most serious and sometimes downer people you have ever met? Not all of them. There are some really silly, crazy Christians. But, you know, if joy is, where's the proof of concept in the lives of most people who follow Jesus? You know, it wouldn't be so bad if life wasn't so hard sometimes. It wouldn't be so bad to talk about joy if this Christmas there still wasn't difficulty. Throughout this whole season, what we've been trying to honor is the real lives of people and welcome them into this manger, as it were, the stable scene, to say that everybody, no matter what you're experiencing in life, has access to the, quote, magic of Christmas, the miracles of Christmas. And I think joy is no different, that God wants more for you than probably you've settled for. So in order to discover it, I want to go to an odd place for a Christmas message. I'm not going to talk about the birth of Jesus. I actually want to talk about a correspondence that happened after the death of Jesus, when people who were following Jesus had about as difficult of a time as you can imagine having and still reported experiencing this joy. And I want to know what they had or what they knew that maybe might help us what we could leverage from their experience that helps us in life as it really is. So really quickly here, this is about 20 or 30 years after Jesus was crucified. He faced capital punishment from Rome. The people who identified with him, who were followers of Jesus now, were being systemically eradicated from the communities under the Roman rule. This is under Emperor Nero. He thought that they were a threat. One of Jesus' closest followers who knew him firsthand, a guy named Peter, you might have heard of Peter, he wrote this chain letter that was supposed to go out to all sorts of people who were scattered in the midst of this terror, this difficult time. And as tough as life was, when they had no comfort really available to them, it's surprising how upbeat this letter is. It sounds like this. This is the opening. This is just an excerpt from it. All praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. I know life stinks and you're running for your lives, but it's by His grace, His great mercy that we have been born again because God raised Jesus Christ from the dead. Now we live with great expectation because they believed, and many of them claimed, over hundreds of them claimed to see Jesus alive again. They had this expectation now that Jesus has proven there's life beyond death. And so if that's true, if it's really true, that means there's really nothing to fear. Like nothing can truly devastate you anymore because life is now limitless. It just goes on. Jesus proved it. So if that's true, Peter says, we have a priceless inheritance. There's something they can't take away from you. An inheritance that is kept in heaven for you. It's protected, it's pure, it's undefiled, it's beyond the reach of change and decay and buyer's remorse and rust and depreciation. It won't die on you. This one's secured. Through your faith, trusting that this is true, God is protecting you by His power until you receive the salvation which is ready to be revealed on the last day, at the end of it all, for all to see. And what he's really saying there, because that language can get confusing, is he's saying God is, if you are alive today, there's good news. You have purpose. As difficult as life is right now, God is protecting that. There's something waiting for you. But right now, if you are alive, you can trust that the world needs you. If you are alive today, if you're breathing today, you can trust that you have purpose for your life, that there's a reason that you're alive today. We're thankful that you are alive today, that God's keeping you here. And there's a certain gift that can happen right in the middle of life, as difficult as it might be, because you are alive today. So he goes on to say, so as tough as life is, be truly glad, which again sounds insulting. Just be glad. Why? Because there's wonderful joy ahead. Life's going to get better. It really will. Justice will be served in time. Even though right now it says you have to endure many trials for a little while. He's trying to give him some perspective. As tough as it is right now, relative to how long your lifespan actually is, your forever life, this is going to be over before you know it. Now keep in mind, Peter is writing this letter to people who are being tortured, separated from their families, imprisoned. A lot of them are being put to death. And so he's not saying that, listen, if you just believe the right way, or you go to church enough, or you sing the right songs, that life will get less difficult, that the trials will go away. But he does want to give them something, or celebrate something that's happening right in the middle of the darkest moments of life. Something right in the middle of it. Something that everybody has access to. Great joy for all people. And here's how they access it. Verse 8. You love him right now, though you've never seen him. Though you do not see him now, you trust him, and you rejoice with a glorious, inexpressible joy. The reward for trusting him will be the salvation of your souls, that life is unending. What he's acknowledging is, listen, you can know what you have, even though right now you don't feel it. You can know what you have, even though you can't see it. Yeah, but I don't have the relationship that I want in my life right now. Yeah, but you do still have something, and you can have inexpressible joy. I don't have the health that I had last year. Yeah, but you still have something. And because of that, you can have inexpressible joy. Yeah, I'm not as employed as I'd really like to be. Yeah, but you have something. And because of that, you can have inexpressible joy. Well, what is that something? Because there's so much that I want that I don't have. So much that if I had it, I might be a little bit happier. So what is this thing that I have that can't be taken away from me, from which I'm supposed to get so much joy? And this is the key, I think, to unlocking this experience of joy in your life, even today, no matter what you're going through.
See, joy is of a different quality. Joy does not happen in our lives when we get what we want. Joy is what happens when you find who you needed most. Joy is what happens when you find who you needed most. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I will medicate frustration in one area of my life with bliss from another area of my life. So for instance, really tough time at work, but I've got a vacation coming. So I can kind of compensate. You know what I'm talking about? Like there's an experience in another area of my life that helps me transcend or maybe even mentally escape from the difficulty of this area of my life. I might be under financial strain this time of year. So maybe I'm going to watch my diet or I'm going to exercise to try and, at least I can control this part of my life because this other part feels like it's in so much chaos. And for a long time, that's what I thought joy was like. As tough as this is, maybe I can just kind of mentally escape to this God up in the clouds somewhere who loves me and I'll be playing harps for the rest of my life. And so I can forget how rough it is right now. But the joy that Peter's describing and is written all over the pages of the first writings of the Jesus followers is something that's happening and experienced and delivered right in the middle of the most difficult moments of life. And it reminds me of the joy I experience when I go through the realities of life with someone that I needed. You know what it's like to go through something and you feel like you're all alone. The disappointment, the discouragement, even the threats of your life, the abuses of your life, and you feel like you are the only one in the world facing this. And there's a different way of engaging that same pain in your life when you are with someone who can give you the reality, the truth that you are loved, that you are known, and that this is not the end. It is the difference between discouragement and devastation. See, joy is not jumping for joy when life is difficult. Joy is knowing that you are not alone. I find that a lot of people walk away from Jesus, not necessarily for intellectual reasons, but because they are shocked to find out that life is just as difficult as he promised it would be. That's the biggest promise of Jesus is not a painless life. In fact, it's quite the opposite. He promised the realities of life with his presence. And the big gift that we can celebrate all year, but particularly now, is Emmanuel, that God, no matter what, is with us, if you'll trust. And in that, you can find something called joy. And what that joy empowers us to do is not trivialize the suffering or ignore it or dismiss it or escape it or compensate for it, but to actually feel armed and equipped to face it for what it is, to grieve it, to be nervous about it, to be confused by it, knowing that it's not the end. Knowing that it doesn't have to devastate us. Knowing that even though I don't have what I want or the comforts that I feel I need, I have what I most deeply need, and that truly is enough. I gave advice to a friend about a year ago. It was Christmas time, actually, so it was almost exactly a year ago. And the advice that I gave her probably disqualifies me from being a pastor, but I'll go ahead and just say it on a microphone anyway. She was telling me that she was worried about having time off for the holidays because in her normal work life, when she has time off, like for the weekend or she gets off of a shift, she likes to drink. And she loves doing that with her friends, and she finds that if she has an extended time off, that sometimes it just goes too far. And at that particular time in her life a year ago, she said that, listen, if I have this time off for Christmas, I'm afraid that it's going to go way too far, and I'm afraid I might do some damage. And she said, I heard you're a pastor, so what do you think I should do? And I said to her, well, can you imagine anything better than what it feels like when you're drinking? And she said, to her credit, very honestly, no. And I said, so I would only do that. And then she looked at me and said, again, aren't you a pastor? I said, yep. I've also been in recovery for 16 years, so I'm not saying this lightly. She said, that's not what I thought you'd say. And so I said, well, if you're asking me what it's like to follow Jesus, I do not recommend following Jesus if feeling good is the best that life can possibly get. But I do recommend following Jesus if never being alone is the best that life can get. Because Jesus does not promise to be the only one who can solve all your needs in life and all of your hopes and dreams. But he is the only one who promised to solve your deepest one. You are not alone in the universe. You are loved. And you have the possibility of the uninterrupted presence of God in your life right now, as it is, if you will trust him. I hope happiness visits you this Christmas. I hope you get an aircraft carrier or whatever's on your list. I hope you get something that you wanted. I really do. Nothing wrong with wanting those things. But it will not matter as much as finally having what you most deeply need. It won't. You know that over time those things will wear off and decay and rust. You don't have to keep searching for what you need most deeply. Joy can be found. It's within your reach. Do you know the Jesus followers were persecuted under Emperor Nero, and there's a reason that they were, is because following Jesus meant that they were living in really, really weird ways. They wouldn't worship Caesar, that's the first one, so they were called atheists. The early Jesus followers were called atheists because everybody believed Caesar was God, and so they didn't think he was God, and they're like, you must be an atheist. And they're like, well, there's some other ideas to explore than Caesar's a God, but that's one of the things they were accused of. This is going to sound crazy to us because of the world we live in. We live in a world post-Jesus, but the earliest Jesus followers were accused of not following what was culturally normal at the time because they wouldn't do business with businesses that were supporting slavery and abuse. But that's how our economy works. Well, we won't do it because we're followers of Jesus. They wouldn't be enticed by the cultural ideals in the Roman world of self and of personal happiness. And throughout all those early writings, you can hear people criticizing, ridiculing them for living such weird lives that didn't just fall in with the ordinary. And what you see over and over again is when people asked Jesus followers, why can't you be happy with the way the world is supposed to work? Why can't you be happy with just getting what you can get out of this life? And why can't you just be happy with being successful in this life? And why won't you just be happy with sex and fame and power? And you see time and time again that the Jesus response to this is not, well, it's because we're better than you. But the Jesus response to that was, well, it's just because we want more than that. Don't you? We have realized that none of those things will satisfy us as deeply as the presence of God in our lives. We just want more, don't you? Joy for you this season is not going to be found in a neatly wrapped box. It can be found in a deep, dark valley. A place to discover that there are some needs that only God can meet. That's what Jesus came to deliver. Joy to the world. The Lord has come to you and to me. You don't have to search for him anymore. He found you. Now, no matter how dark it is, how unhappy you feel, you have what you needed most. You have him. And because of that, you can have joy. Let me pray for you. God, thank you that you are not distant from us. And often when life is difficult, that's precisely where we think you are, is somewhere far off. It's encouraging for us to know that actually the closer we get to being honest about life, the closer we get to where you really are. That you are not a God who is detached from the pain of life or detached from the suffering or discouragement or despair of life, but you're right there in the middle of it, giving us the power not only to endure it, but to redeem it. Things that might have been meant for our destruction, God, you resurrect into something for our good. I pray specifically, Lord, for those who might be hearing this, who are feeling like there is not a reason to keep going. God, I pray that you would speak to their soul in a way that my words can't, to tell them that because they are alive, they have purpose today and the world needs them, that we are better because they are here, that there is so much more. And God, I pray specifically for the person who feels very, they might be surrounded by people, but they feel just alone in the universe. Like they're going crazy. They're the only one that might be feeling or thinking the way they're feeling and thinking. God, tell them in a way that my words can't that it is true that God is with us. And this is good news of great joy, and it's available to all people. Jesus, thank you that you have arrived, that you've brought the presence of God to our existence. Thank you for loving us. And we pray this in your name. Amen.
Thank you for listening. For more information, follow us on social media at Radius Church LA and visit us on the web at radius.la.